Your sensors are correct. Do not adjust your heading. You've discovered the Omega Particle, streaming to the Alpha Quadrant and beyond. Here's your host, the anchorman of the Federation, the Doctor of Dilithium. This is Jonathan Wiegand.
Welcome back to the Omega Particle. I am your gracious host, Jonathan Wiegand, and thank you for joining us on another excursion into podcasting excellence. We are streaming to you live from the Alpha Quadrant and beyond in our secret bunker on the East Coast of the United States. Thank you for all your support, by the way, and we love the feedback on the Picard episode. So thank you. Just want to shout that out before we get deep into this episode. So today is the day that everybody has been waiting for. We are finally going to wrap up the Khan series and finally figure out how Khan gets into the Botany Bay and everything in between from when we last saw him with Seven in her headquarters in New York City. Now, disclaimer, if you haven't listened to the first episode of the Khan series, it's only maybe 2 episodes back, so I would definitely pause this, go back and listen to the first part, because it'll make this second episode a lot more enjoyable. You won't be wondering who these characters are. And FYI, when I mention 7, I do not mean 7 of 9. So if you didn't listen to the first episode, you will be immensely lost from the get-go. So I'm not going to waste anybody's time here. We're going to go jump directly into the episode and start covering Khan. From where we last saw Roberta and Khan and Seven, I think the year was 1989, the Berlin Wall was falling, and Khan ambushes Roberta in her headquarters in New York City. And so when he ambushes her, he says, "Hey, don't come after us. We are going to take over the world, and next time we meet won't be pretty." Basically threatens her. And now that he's threatening her, he takes all of the information from her computer and where to locate all of the children of Chrysalis at around the world. Because if you remember, they scatter them after Project Chrysalis in the Tar Desert blew up by nuclear explosion. So he's getting all the locations of the other genetically altered children, and he steals the ozone manipulation technology from Roberta and Seven. Now that we are 3 years in the future, so the year now is 1992, and we see Roberta infiltrate Khan's secret island, which is very like 1980s villain. And Roberta sneaks in, tries to get a kind of look on what Khan's doing. Khan has been virtually undetectable for the past 3 years. She can't get a fix on him. He's kind of going all over the planet. So she finally does. She tracks him down this island, and she gets captured by him and basically asks, "Hey, what have you been doing? I haven't been able to find you." And Khan explains, he's like, "Hey, I've been rounding up." And again, why would you explain your plan to these people trying to stop you? Maybe it's arrogance to be like, "Hey, this is what I'm doing, and you can't stop it." Maybe that's what Khan's doing. And so Khan explains, like, "Hey, I've been rounding up all the children of Chrysalis, and I've been kind of keeping tabs on them and communicating with them, and also have fully built the ozone manipulation technology and have decided to call this technology Morning Star." And why would he pick Morning Star? Because he gets inspiration from the book of Isaiah in the Old Testament, where Morning Star is another name for Satan, the devil, as he's cast down from heaven. And Khan likes that analogy, and that Morning Star is going to bring all of this brightness and this UV light when it tears apart the ozone layer on planet Earth. And so Khan takes Roberta captive, and she eventually gets rescued by Seven, and they've recreated their antimatter technology transportation system. Next, we focus, and it goes to Khan's fortress in northern India. And Khan has this fortress, I think, from the 1800s that the Swedes built. I tried to do some research, couldn't really nail down this fortress in Centrograd, so I don't know if this is another historical thing Greg Cox is trying to tie in or what? So basically Khan comes over to his fortress and he invites all of these ambassadors and delegations from the powerful world players. So he has China there, he has India there, he has several delegations from Europe, he has the United States, and he basically says, hey, hope you like this city. It's going to be the capital of my new world order. There's nothing you can do about it, and you should just pledge allegiance to me. Obviously, everybody gets upset. They bucket the option, and they bucket Khan, especially for India, where Khan's located. The Indian ambassador gets up and says, we won't be bullied. This is a democratic nation, and we're not going to subject ourselves to a tyrant and dictator like you. And Khan straight out throws a throwing star at him and kills the ambassador from India. And then all the other delegates freak out and try to run away. And Khan's bodyguards capture him and they say, you can't do this. You can't cut the world's throat. And Khan goes, oh, yes, I can. And Khan goes into the Morningstar Project, how he can take out the ozone layer and expose the whatever nation, or even if he wants to, take out the entire ozone layer of the entire world. So we would have no more ozone, period. He tells that to the ambassadors and delegations and says, hey, go back to your leadership, tell them, and when they find out about this, they'll come bend the knee. Still, the ambassador's like, well, we don't believe you. That's ridiculous. And Khan's like, well, I'll show you a demonstration. And already there was an ozone hole over Antarctica. Khan makes it 20% bigger, basically saying, see, I told you I can do it. Now, go do what I told you to do. So next, in about, the book goes around 3 months later, Khan rounds up all of his children of Chrysalis brothers and sisters. It's really interesting to see what some of them did. I know in the last episode we mentioned that a lot of them led self-destructive lives, but the ones who didn't, one is like an African warlord. One is a Ukrainian Serb, like nationalist that wants to take over and genetically cleanse all of the Balkan states and is doing so. Another is a militia leader in Southeast Arizona, pledging to become its own sovereign state in the United States and kind of an extremist. So I think it's funny that a lot of his brothers and sisters got into leadership position and are kind of douchebags, to be honest with you. I mean, there's even a cult leader who has I think 70 people in his cult. And so it's like you have a Marshall Applewhite, and who, for those who don't know, that was the cult leader of Heaven's Gate in the United States in the 90s. And so you kind of have this broad brush of these psychopath megalomaniacs that are the children of Chrysalis. So Khan brings them there, kind of just like the previous political delegation, and says, hey, you can be part of my world order, and we're going to rule the world together, but ultimately under me. The buck stops with me. I'm in charge. You have to listen to me. And of course, same thing with like the political delegation. They balk at that idea. They do not like it. And Khan basically doesn't kill any of them, and doesn't kill any of them for specific reasons, saying they're genetically superior. They're not like dirty politicians, and none of them deserve to die for this. However, one brother does get under Khan's skin. I'm not going to try to pronounce his name because I do not speak Serb. It's a Ukrainian nationalist who goes and argues with him and says, if you try to use Morningstar, we'll come after you. Don't try. We jump forward another year. So now we're in 93. We're in the height of the Eugenics War in Star Trek history timeline, because that usually is 91, 92 to 95, 96. It kind of depends on which series you're watching, or because I know Enterprise goes into the history, about 35 to 37 million people died in the Eugenics War. And some series, like I know DS9 mentions it a few times. So it's kind of a hard timeline to nail down, but overall, mid 90s, early 90s is the general consensus of the Eugenics War. Sorry for my tangent. So as we come into 1993, we see that it's been a super bloody year, and the people in Khan's empire, which now is mainly Southeast Asia, a lot of parts of the islands in Southeast Asia, Pacifica, and going into China, India, and going towards the Middle East. A lot of the people were upset in his empire because it's really high inflation, low food supplies, and people are just not having it. They're like, hey, under our old leaders, at least we got food. One particular day, they're rioting outside of his fortress in northern India, and in such arrogance, Khan's like, they need me even more because they cannot control or help themselves, so I must do it for them. And as he's going on into this whole monologue of rule and how they don't, common people do not deserve to rule, which, I mean, he is a megalomaniac. He gets his message, encoded message, from this old USSR agent. And USSR says, hey, I've got things for your genetic program, and I've got enhancements for your genetic program that can make you better, stronger, and faster that we were developing in the Soviet Union that we never gave to Project Chrysalis. So you could definitely benefit from this information. So, of course, Khan is intrigued, and they're communicating back and forth, and it's a very rather quick exchange. And then Khan's like, okay, I'll meet you. Where do you want to meet? And they decide on this old temple a couple hours away. However, I'm just going to skip through some of this. It's a trap. It's from the Ukrainian Serb genetic brother of Khan's. Basically, that guy tries to kill Khan straight out. I guess he just wants to take care of Khan because he knows Khan will never be satisfied, and that his empire has grown, killing more and more people since the last time they met a year ago. So maybe he's just trying to be proactive and take him out. All of a sudden, all of these earthquakes tear down this temple. Khan barely gets out alive. The book says that it took out 30,000 people in northern India and made 130,000 people homeless. Now, interestingly enough, there was actually a real earthquake in 1993 around kind of northern India, Himalayas region. So maybe Greg Cox is using that, and that's maybe why he doesn't explain it. Maybe it was just serendipitous timing that Khan was there and caught that this trap in his brother. But either way, Greg Cox doesn't go into any explanation about it. So Khan agrees that revenge is needed and that he's going to use Morningstar on his brother. Now, as Khan returns to his compound in his fortress, he is stopped by his bodyguard saying, hey, there's a guy here that used to work for your mom. Now, Khan doesn't know a lot about his mother, just that she was head of Project Chrysalis, and that's about it. And this dude shows up, and his name is Dr. Donald Williams, and he's English, and he's kind of an older guy in his 60s and 70s, and he used to work, like I said before, at Project Chrysalis, specifically with Khan's mother. Now, Khan, of course, has just escaped from being killed, so he's probably not in the best mood, and this man explains, Dr. Williams, that his mother was working on this flesh-eating bacteria, and Khan's like, okay, what's the big deal? That doesn't really help me here because if I release flesh-eating bacteria to the masses, that's going to take on my people. And Dr. Williams is like, well, not necessarily. Your mother made you and all genetically altered kids, aka the children of Chrysalis, completely immune to the disease. And actually, Williams goes on to explain that this was Khan's mother's master plan all along, was to develop this flesh-eating bacteria to spread across the earth, take all of humanity out, and let Khan and his brothers and sisters rule the earth without causing bloodshed themselves. And so Khan is like super upset. He's like, so you're with my mother, but you didn't try to save her. You didn't try to rescue her or be there for her when this massive nuclear explosion went off. Where were you? Why weren't you with her? Why didn't you help her? And Dr. Williams is like, there was this blonde named Roberta and this guy named Seven that were with her and actually prevented her from leaving. And so Khan never knew that. And then he vows revenge on Seven and Roberta. And that, man, he's vowing revenge a lot. I mean, you got the Serb, Ukrainian guy. Now you got Roberta and Seven. The list just keeps getting longer, like Steve Buscemi in Billy Madison. So now we're going to jump a little bit and we're going to go to Roberta and see what she's up to, because we really haven't seen her or heard that much about her for the past year or so since she escaped Khan. It's current time, 1993, and she decides to join the Army of Eternal Vigilance. Remember when I was talking about that guy, Khan's brother in Southeast Arizona that had a militia? Well, you guessed it. That's where Roberta's heading. And she decides to join him because they're trying to get a fix on Khan. They really have no information, and this is the only kind of the plausible, easiest way to kind of get close to one of the children of Chrysalis. Like I said, some of them were dictators, and since Roberta can pose as a USA citizen, a little bit easier. And she actually runs this like extremist blog for like a year to kind of get, well, I guess that's what she's been up to. She's been running this blog for a year to kind of cement her cover to Hawkeye Morrison is Khan's brother and the guy who runs the AEV. So Roberta now has joined the Army of Eternal Vigilance. She's going to stay there and kind of stay undercover and see what she can learn, try to get close to Hawkeye and kind of go over where he's and if he's talking to Khan and what is the plan for world domination by Khan. So 2 weeks go by and we see that Ukrainian and Serb brother giving a speech at the UN, talking about how that this genetic cleansing of the Balkan states will continue and nobody can stop him. And as he's ranting and tirading, all of a sudden this odor starts to go into the UN assembly in Geneva. It's nerve gas. And the whole UN assembly is panicking, running out. Some people don't get out. Some people get hit by the nerve gas, and one of them is a Ukrainian brother. Somebody has taken out this brother of Chrysalis. Immediately when I read this, I was like, okay, Khan took him out. Khan saw his shot, took him out. Bold move, because now you're making the entire UN General Assembly mad at you, and they might come just take you out. However, that very same day, Roberta is doing some labor around the compound in Southeast Arizona. She overhears Hawkeye Morrison talking to one of his bodyguards about how he traded with Khan and that they gave Khan this nerve gas if he provided this anti-force field that prevented transporter technology. And Hawkeye loved that because he was kind of paranoid, saying, well, the U.S. government could come in here at any moment. So now that we have this force field, they can never transport in here and take us out without us even knowing that they were in our perimeter. Hawkeye continues talking with his bodyguard saying, well, Khan and I have another thing coming up. We're going to gas the Channel, which the Channel is the underground tunnel between England and France. It's very cool. I went on it last year and it is very neat, but you have no Wi-Fi reception. A little random personal tidbit there. So Roberta sneaks into Hawkeye Morrison's office because, backstory, he allows no media or news cycle to go through the compound. So he is the controller of news and the controller of information, just like a dictator and tyrant would be. And so Roberta, knowing this, says, okay, the only link to the outside world is his office. So she goes in his office, gets on the internet and finds out, this channel thing is happening. She finds all these files on phase 2, which of course we already know what it is about. And she contacts Seven saying, hey, you need to go stop him. It's going to be the next week. I'm at this compound and I'm escaping now. Plans in place. I assume Seven rescues the day because we really don't hear about phase 2 or the channel again. So we're assuming that Seven saves the day and stops his attack, and Roberta escapes from this nasty compound. Flash forward to Chrysalis Island, that island that first came up at the beginning of the episode. Now, Chrysalis Island is where Khan is doing all of his genetic experiments, genetic alterations and manipulations. And the person in charge of this is Dr. DeSalle. She's the head scientist of it. She took Dr. Williams' flesh-eating bacteria and she created an airborne version, which is terrifying to have an airborne flesh-eating bacteria. So she wants to put Williams' word to the test. And she gets the cult leader to be the test subject. Obviously, they have this high esteemed view of one another, so they don't want to just pick anybody. So they pick the cult leader, which, okay, he's probably the bottom of the totem pole anyway. That's fine. Oh, and fun fact, Greg Cox even goes into like a little bit of a detail about this cult leader and how his cult committed mass suicide and he was the only one left. He was disgraced, so he came to Chrysalis Island to kind of escape authorities and escape the heat. And they're like, hey, why not? Let's experiment on him. He's one of us, but he's kind of out there. Again, kind of pushing that notion of a Marshall Applewhite. So as they experiment on this cult leader, they never really get his name, they just call him cult leader. They experiment on this cult leader. They realize, oh, it's true. Because normally this flesh-eating bacteria takes about a minute, 2 minutes to kill whoever comes in contact with it. This cult leader's been chilling out in this airtight container for like 2 hours. Nothing's happening to him. So Dr. DeSalle reports to Khan, hey, Dr. Williams was telling the truth. This flesh-eating bacteria is perfectly safe to the children of Chrysalis. You have nothing to worry about. And then Dr. DeSalle and Khan relatively decide, hey, let's take out Dr. Williams. He didn't do anything to save my mother. He's a jerk. Next, Dr. DeSalle cuts up his biosuit, because they're in this airtight chamber, cuts up his biosuit, infiltrates flesh-eating bacteria into it, takes Dr. Williams out. Khan then asks Dr. DeSalle to come give him a full report, and as Dr. DeSalle is giving him a report, Khan mentions, hey, I have 230 bio weapons that I got from Afghanistan and the USSR, a shady underbelly of society. So I've got these 235 bionuclear warheads. They're all on this rocket pad right now. So we can put this flesh-eating bacteria and we can just destroy the Earth. One of his advisors, isn't Morningstar enough? Like, we have Morningstar. We have this ultimate last weapon. Do we need more? Do we need another, like, doomsday device? And Khan, which makes a lot of sense, Khan argues, hey, we do need this because Project Morningstar would take everybody out. Genetically altered, normal people, it would take everyone out, period. The ozone's gone. But this bacteria would only take out, quote unquote, inferior people. So Khan could conquer the world without any real damage to infrastructure, etc., etc. And fun fact is that this advisor was actually from the same city that the pesticide factory blew up in, if you remember from the first episode, and says to Khan, don't you remember that pesticide factory? That was a disaster. And why would you put people through that? Normal people, your people through that. And Khan goes, that was an accident. That was terrible. But this new virus, it will rebirth the earth. And their sacrifice will not be in vain to a better world. Khan goes back to his fortress and orders Dr. DeSalle to load the bioweapons and to launch them. As Dr. DeSalle's doing that, I'm sure it takes some time to load 235. As Dr. DeSalle is doing that, all of a sudden we see these sea creatures come out of the water and start taking off fins, and we realize, oh my gosh, they're costumes. And not only are they costumes, they're full of these women, these genetically altered women. Now, I mentioned the African warlords and I mentioned the Serb-Ukrainian dictator, but also there are a series of Amazonian women from the Project Chrysalis that are Khan's sisters, and they are 100% anti-male. However, they catch wind that Khan is doing this and say, well, you're going to kill everyone, women included, so we need to take you out, and this is unacceptable. So you have this commando unit of like women coming on hand gliders, coming up out of the ocean and basically like coming out of the walls, it seems, just out of nowhere to take Khan and this bacteria out. So as Dr. DeSalle is in her office, she hears all of these explosions, and so these Amazonian women are coming into this compound and they're taking them out. They are these genetically altered superhuman beings. Dr. DeSalle panics and says, I'm going to release the flesh-eating bacteria. Of course, she doesn't know that these are genetically altered children of Chrysalis. So she releases the bacteria and it starts to kill all of her bodyguards. So it basically just opened the door for these Amazonian women to come in and take out Dr. DeSalle. So the leader of the Amazonian tribes catch up to Dr. DeSalle, and they're like, hey, we know what you're about to do, and even though you're a woman, we're going to have to stop you. And Dr. DeSalle's like, slight chance. So Dr. DeSalle goes to launch the missiles that are already loaded with bacteria, and the Amazonians shoot her down. So the Amazonians reveal they have this nuclear weapon, and they're going to completely wipe off the map Chrysalis Island. Now that they're going to take it out and the airborne bacteria will go away, there's going to be no issues or ever again from Khan with this particular virus. And interestingly enough, again, Chrysalis Project is blown up and taken out by a nuclear weapon in the Tar Desert. And now you have Chrysalis Island taken out and saved by a nuclear bomb. So anything named Chrysalis, just don't name it that. That's what I'm getting at. So after Chrysalis Island is blown up and these earthquakes have gone on, and it leaks out that Khan had these bionuclear weapons and that he was planning on just sending them everywhere, going to take out the human race entirely. And people lose their minds, rightfully so. India starts rioting. Nepal, China, everywhere his empire is at is starting to riot because he can't control all those people with those few limited genetic people he had before, and he's not going to use his own weapon on himself. So he has all of these riots under his belt that he really has no idea how to control. And then next, he gets word that there's B-52s coming to bomb the fortress from the United States, that there's Russian and French fighter planes coming in to kind of take out any of his followers and anybody resisting. So basically the world is coming after Khan, and we see what he's made of now. Khan says, if they're going to come after me, I'm going to take them all out, and I'm going to do something called Project Gamora. No, not that Gamora from Guardians of the Galaxy. Project Gamora, which would take the ozone from the entire world. There would be zero ozone left. This is Khan's last-ditch effort to say, if you're going to take me out, I'm going to take everyone else out. So as he's about to start Project Gamora, all of a sudden, Transporter shows up. It's Seven. And first off, Khan draws a gun on Seven, like, you didn't help my mother, you didn't rescue her, I'm going to shoot you, like, you should know why you're going to die. Seven explains, no, your mother wanted to stay there. She was all about Project Chrysalis. She didn't want to live without her work. Khan just, okay, accepts it. And I didn't like that part because I thought, hey, do you know what? Maybe there should be some more depth in searching than in just being like, okay. So, but either way, that's the way the story is. And that's how we're reporting it now, is that Khan goes, okay, that's fine. And Seven says, hey, the world's coming after you, but I have an option for you. And I have this thing for you if you want to. And Khan goes, interesting. Well, how are you going to get me out of this situation? Seven goes, I'm going to take you to a place, but it's not on planet Earth. It's in orbit. So flashback, I've been leaving this out because I wanted to get through Khan's main story first. Pretty much the entire book, Greg Cox is weaving the story about NASA and Area 51 and how they've developed this DY-100 ship, how it's a sleeper ship and it can last hundreds and hundreds of years. And so we eventually see Roberta get in touch with this scientist that works for this Area 51 project in NASA. She meets her, interestingly enough, little tip of the cap, at Vic's in Las Vegas, which is, of course, the same Vic from DS9 and the Space Lounge in the later seasons of that show. So I really love that little tip of the cap from Greg Cox to put Vic in there. So she meets this astronaut named Shannon and basically feeds her information for a number of years about how to build this ship and how the ship needs to function, et cetera, et cetera. And eventually Roberta and Seven steal the ship from NASA and Area 51, put it into orbit, and now they have this ship that Khan and his supporters can go to to escape this massive world retaliation against him. So to catch you up, now Seven is on this ship with Khan saying, hey, if you want to, you can take this ship, go start a new life, a new world order somewhere else, just with your genetic brothers and sisters. And you don't have to deal with governments. You don't have to deal with anybody. You can just go and colonize a planet all by yourself, and then maybe even start an empire just with your offspring and continue your genetic research there if you want to. Khan likes that because he was just about to blow up and kill everybody on planet Earth. So he's like, I like this idea of going out, making it my own, and doing what I can. Khan agrees. Khan says, all right, we'll do it, but I want your guarantee that we'll be safe and that this will work. So Khan transports up, I think he has 82 brothers and sisters and followers of his that come up to the ship, and they're all put to sleep except him. And so they're all put to sleep, and he's monitoring them, and they wear these gold clothes that is referenced to in Space Seed, the original series episode. Khan says, okay, I have no other really option. The world wants me dead. This seems the best way to preserve my people, my brothers and sisters and followers. They're about to leave. Seven goes, what do we need to name the ship? And as they're currently in orbit, they're over Australia. And Khan goes, well, the first colony of Australia, a ship full of criminals, landed and founded Botany Bay. So Khan goes, we'll be called the Botany Bay. And they put Khan to sleep, and they set the trajectory for somewhere in the beta quadrant, somewhere that it'll take hundreds of years on impulse drive to get to and rid the world of these genetic overlords and dictators. So now Khan is on the Botany Bay, and as Khan's ship starts to leave, we see the Morningstar project and satellite blow up. I assume that's because Seven or Roberta took care of it with other means and necessary. They really don't go into any explanation about that. So we see Morningstar go down, and Khan and his followers go off into the great unknown, eventually to be picked up by Captain James T. Kirk and the Enterprise in the famous original series episode Space Seed. So that's it. That is the story of Khan, how he went from this small child at 5 years old to being on the Botany Bay. I've really enjoyed researching this whole project. It's been a lot of fun. However, it's been a book. It was about 700-800 pages total. And for me, a lot of the material was really heavy at some points. So I think maybe in the future, we'll just do kind of topics and character studies and character deep dives. But doing books was interesting, and I liked it. But again, if I would love to hear your feedback on this. If you want to be like, hey, let's do more kind of Star Trek lore that's not normally covered, and sometimes that's books or comic books or anything like that, I'd be more than happy to do that for you guys. I'm here to answer all of your Star Trek questions and do these deep dives that normally people don't have the time for or want to. So anyway, I'll leave you with a good question that I thought about while researching this whole topic of Khan. And that is, was it Khan's time period that made him a dictator and a megalomaniac? Or was it the genetic engineering? Because you could argue the 20th century produced a lot of dictators over its time. And what if somebody in the 23rd or 24th century, would they respond the same way with the same values of that 23rd and 24th century? I don't know. That is an interesting question. However, personally, I think it was a little bit of both. I think it was a little bit of the genetic altering led to that arrogance. I think it was the genetic manipulation that gave them that attitude that everybody was inferior to them. And that's usually what we see in history, is that when one race or one people or exalted over everybody else or another particular group, that it doesn't end well and it's not good. So I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's the 20th century values that produced a lot of dictators, but also it's the arrogance and psychopath of believing you're inferior to another person. So that is my 2 cents. And thank you for this ride on Khan. It's been great. I've thoroughly enjoyed it and bringing Khan to the masses. I just want to say again, thank you for all the support and love that you guys have given to me. I definitely appreciate it. Once again, we are on Instagram at Omega Particle Podcast. And if you have any ideas, topics, or just want to talk to me about the show or about Star Trek in general, feel free to reach out to me on Instagram, or you can hit me up on Gmail at omegaparticlepodcast@gmail.com. Again, please rate, subscribe, and review. Those are vital to little podcasts like me, and I would definitely appreciate it more than you could ever know. Make my day. And always remember, guys, second star to the right, straight on till morning.